We continue reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is. We are on chapter 3, text 35. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha parma paradharmat swa anushtitat swadharme nidanam shreyaha paradharmo bhavya vaha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. Because Arjuna was saying, I'm going to give up fighting and I'm going to become a renunciate. I'll live by begging. So he wanted to give up his prescribed duties and he wanted to become a beggar. Krishna is telling him, don't do that. Don't do that, because out of your nature, you will again end up fighting. You know, your nature is still there. So this is what Krishna is telling us. We have our nature. Work according to our nature. Work according to what is the nature. In that way, we will be peaceful. This is what he's saying. He's saying to follow another's path is dangerous. Therefore, one should discharge his prescribed duties in full Krishna consciousness rather than those prescribed for others. Materially prescribed duties are duties enjoined according to one's psychophysical condition under the spell of the modes of material nature. So we are in a particular body, in a particular position, in whatever, in a particular place in society, is according to our psychophysical condition, which is good for us, according to our own nature. So we should do the duties which are according to our position. Why? Because that desires are there. That's the reason we are in that position. So it's better that we remain in that position, at the same time hear and chant, engage in Krishna consciousness, and do our duties for the pleasure of Krishna. So spiritual duties are as ordered by the spiritual master for the transcendental service of Krishna. But whether material or spiritual, one should stick to his prescribed duties even up to death, rather than imitate another's prescribed duties. We should not imitate, because if we try to imitate another person, oh, this person looks to be happier, let me do what he is doing. But that person's nature is totally different. That's the reason he's able to do what he's doing. And what makes him happy is not necessarily going to make us happy, because we are totally different. We have different desires. Not each of us have the same capabilities, same abilities, same desires, same psychophysical condition. And so that's the reason of the proposal of Lord Caitanya is, wherever you are, just stay there. Just begin hearing and chanting. You do not need to artificially give up your position. Duties duties on the spiritual platform and duties on the material platform may be different, but the principle of following the authorized direction is always good for the performer. Yesterday, we were hearing in Sri Upanishad that care of the material body and our spiritual and our spirit soul are like two parallel lines, and they should go on hand in hand. We can't neglect either. They both have to go on. And both need to be performed. Why? For our purification, so that we can be purified, because that is what ultimately this life is for purification, so that we can understand our true position and that we are able to give up this world. We are able to give up this world at the time of leaving this material body and get a spiritual body, that don't come back to the material world. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, you do your duty and think of me. And in this way, you will remember me at the time of death. And that is what we are advised to do. We do our duties. Whatever duties we have to do, we do it. Each of us have different duties. Each of us have different positions. So we do them for the pleasure of Krishna. And in this way, we will be able to remember Krishna at the time of death. It's only in this way. Srila Prabhupada says that if we do not remember Krishna while we are struggling for existence in this material world, how will we be able to remember him at the time of death then? We won't be able to. We won't be. And so when we are doing our duties for the pleasure of Krishna, it is a great struggle. It's not easy. It's not easy. It is a struggle. But by this, by constantly struggling to remember Krishna, doing it for the pleasure of Krishna, we are remembering him more and more. And then it will be easier to remember him when we are leaving the body. And it's not, as we just said in Bhagavatam, not that, oh, we are waiting to leave the body. Oh, I need to remember Krishna now. Why? Only so I can remember it at the time of death. No, it is so pleasing to think of Krishna. It's so happy to always think of Krishna. When we are experiencing Krishna, it's so joyful to be associating with Krishna by hearing about him, by remembering him, by chanting his names, by remembering his wonderful, wonderful qualities. It's Srila Rupa Goswami says in the Nectar of Devotion that Krishna's qualities are an impetus for love in the devotee. When we are trying to remember Krishna's sweetness, as we just heard, by experiencing Krishna's sweetness, the gopis feel more love for him. So by remembering Krishna's amazing qualities, it's an impetus to revive our love for him. So then, when one is under the spell of the modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for his particular situation and should not imitate others. So till the time we find ourselves in this material body, means we are under the spell of material nature. We are under the modes of material nature. What shall we do? We need to follow our prescribed duties, whatever it is. For example, a Brahmana who is in a mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in a mode of passion is allowed to be violent. As such, for a Kshatriya, it is better to be vanquished, following the rules of violence, than to imitate a Brahmana who follows the principle of non-violence. So a Kshatriya, it is his dharma to fight. For a Brahmana, it's not his nature to fight. If we put a Brahmana on a battlefield, he won't be able to fight. He will start taking his japa and start chanting. He won't know what to do. And if we put a Kshatriya in a scenario where there is fighting is needed, if we tell him to chant japa, he'll say, what? I need to fight. How can I do that? So Krishna is saying to Arjuna, it's your nature. It's your nature. You fight here. Don't try to pretend. He's saying, don't pretend. You fight. You think of me. You do it for my pleasure. Do your duty for my pleasure, and you fight. Even if you die on the battlefield, you will attain the heavenly abode. So everyone has to cleanse his heart by a gradual process, not abruptly. We all have to cleanse our heart. Each of us. Each of us have. This is the reason we are here in the material world. Krishna has made this material world for two purposes. One, to give us a facility to enjoy sense gratification, for us to pretend to be the controller, enjoyer, and proprietor, because that is what we wanted to do. We want to imitate him. So he's given us this facility through Mother Nature to be able to do things. But what's the higher purpose? What's his purpose behind it? He wants us to come back home. He wants us to come back home, to be situated in our original position. And so that needs purification. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. So this is on a liberated platform, transcends the modes of nature. The modes of nature are very, very difficult to overcome, very difficult. But by the process of Krishna consciousness, it is possible. Krishna says that devi hi esha gunamai mam maya duratyaya mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite, that one who surrenders unto me, that this divine energy of mine, which is comprised of three modes of material nature, is very easy to overcome it only when one surrenders unto me. Otherwise, it's very difficult. So, and when one comes to that position, under the guidance, under the proper direction of a bona fide spiritual master, then he can do anything and everything. This is on a liberated platform. Liberated platform also under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. So we can see, even if one is liberated, still has to be under the guidance of a spiritual master who is bona fide, who's coming in the parampara system. In that complete stage of Krishna consciousness, the Kshatriya may act as a Brahmana, or a Brahmana may act as a Kshatriya. In the transcendental stage, the distinctions of the material world do not apply. So this is on the transcendental platform, where the nature, the modes of nature do not affect us. When we are on the body platform, when we relate with us as a body, then the modes of nature apply to us. They apply to us. But once we are liberated under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master, means that's a transcendental platform. Then even while living in the body, we are not affected by the modes of nature. For example, Vishwamitra was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahmana, whereas Parshuram was a Brahmana, but later on he acted as a Kshatriya. Being transcendentally situated, they could do so. But as long as one is on the material platform, he must perform his duties according to the modes of material nature. At the same time, he must have a full sense of Krishna consciousness. So we can see throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling Arjuna, you do your duty, but think of me. So this is Karma Yoga. Nowhere does Krishna tell Arjuna, you just sit down and do nothing. Some people wrongly think that, oh, if I start chanting, if I start hearing about Krishna, how am I going to do my other material duties? I have so many things to do. So Krishna is not saying don't do that. Of course, he's saying do your duties. You have a nature, you are going to act in that way. Do it, but become Krishna conscious, hear and chant. It's not that 24 hours we are doing our duty. There are so many hours that we are doing other things. So, and if we are able to hear and chant, what will happen? We can do our material duties in a much better way, in a much faster way, in a much pleasing way, in a much more intelligent way. Because then we are connecting to Krishna, and Krishna gives us the intelligence how to act properly. When we are doing it for his pleasure, he gives us the intelligence. So it's in our best interest when we hearing and chanting, and we are able to do our duties for the pleasure of Krishna. And in that way, we can really please everyone, whoever we are trying to please, because we are pleasing Krishna. Are there any questions or comments?
No, all good.
So thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for listening in. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.